Satori, the company, we are in the business of providing secure access in real time to your sensitive PII or PHI financial data. We work across different types of data vendor. So today we're going to be focused on AWS data stacks such as Redshift or Athena or RDS, that kind of thing. In point of fact, we operate, across all cloud providers and a pretty wide bunch of different data vendor types. We're going to spend about 5 minutes showing some slides, and then I'm going to jump into the product. It's a real-time product, so it demonstrates in real time quite nicely. The big blind spot from our perspective is not around authentication or who has access, but rather once they have access, the tracking of authorization, the ability to do broad or fine-grained authorization, the ability to do that, across disparate systems. That's really the problem statement that Satori is setting out to solve. What we see in the market is the two extremes. Either there's not enough allowance, and so people aren't productive, they're blocked from having access to the information they need to do their job. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's too much allowance, the opposite of principle of least privilege, which introduces a large attack surface, a huge risk as far as overexposing your information. So Satori is trying to bridge those two extremes, on a kind of daily, minute, hourly basis. Some of the things we've seen, around ungoverned authorization. I'll let this slide just sort of sink in and not read every bullet point, but these 5 types of observable phenomena are just 5 out of dozens of problem statements that we've seen when you have improperly or ungoverned authorization schemes. And so, people come to Satori because they want to lock this down and yet still allow their audience, their data consumers, their BI users to be able to do their job effectively, right? So we're trying to bridge these two worlds in a seamless manner. Specific to AWS, some of the, like tell signs when we know that Satori is a good solution fit for people that have, a cloud-based security topology is, again, disparate data sources. We have Redshift. Oh, but 30% of our org also uses Snowflake, or they use, an Azure stack because it's an acquisition we had. Can Satori unify that? And the answer is yes. Another one is around, fast-moving data topologies. You can't try to orchestrate authorization by making copies of data sets or running SQL views or other kind of data layer specific problems because they simply take too long. So Satori has a totally different approach to that problem. Use cases, the ability to support principle of least privilege. This is kind of a foundational premise for Satori, and we're pretty proud of being able to roll out a security mesh that both supports POLP, but as well as supports instant access, the ability to manage access requests. Can those access requests be granted in seconds? Can they expire after 6 days or 12 days automatically? Can the whole thing be audited? And these are core features in Satori. POLP, just-in-time access, and of course, visibility. Challenges. The big takeaway here, if there's nothing else you learn from the next 15 minutes, is that there's 2 abstract types of way of securing data silos via authorization. The first way is not how Satori does it. It's by orchestration. There's a whole variety of solves out there, of solutions in the market involved with operating at the database layer or making copies or running views. All of that kind of redaction, orchestration, scripted approach. Satori is not that company. We are in the business of real-time querying and real-time interception of sensitive PII or any other data cataloging that you tag, and then providing that in real time to the person or client or tool that requested it. With that, let's actually jump into the software proper and take a direct look. I've got some tabs across the top here just for the sake of keeping things organized and tidy. First up, of course, the Satori product and the platform is a SaaS product We are an official AWS partner, and you can head over to AWS Marketplace and find us and get started for $1, right? So we have a nice starter kit, and you can get up and running. And what you would see when you get up and running is, here is our product proper. It's a SaaS product. It's a deploy anywhere product. It can be deployed in any cloud, in any region, and the main engine of Satori can be completely controlled by our customers. At a glance, just without turning this into a training session, the left-hand side here reads like a workflow from bottom up. So we're currently looking at the end of the story, so to speak. We're looking at the CISO or executive that wants to explore all the queries that have come through the system and what tools were involved and what tagging, what did we find, what kinds of tags and what kinds of sensitive information. But if we were to start at the beginning, you would connect to your data stores. There's a long, wide variety of supported stores, both AWS-centric as well as not AWS-centric. You would then use the main pieces of our software around masking PII, masking financial data, protecting things like that. Rajdeep, on one of the previous sessions, answered a question. Somebody asked, what are the secure coding, what are the security system guidelines? And his answer was, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, and that's totally true. And then he wrote, our clients are responsible for security in the cloud on the application layer. And that's exactly like the problem statement that Satori tries to solve. So again, just cruising through this workflow, you would create security policies. And we have a very strong concept of what we call a data set. A data set is not a set of data. It's actually a collection of security information about underlying data stores. So on the screen here, this data set, whose name is AWS examples, is protecting and auditing and providing visibility and access management for a Snowflake dataset account and a SQL Server account in Azure, RDS Postgres, and a Redshift instance, and an Athena work group, all from one unified model. These tabs across the top here start to hint at the fact that we have integration with SSO. So I can have my Okta HR team or my Azure Active Directory data science team get certain kinds of access for certain kinds of duration with certain policies applied. Again, those policies are also configured here. So, and then finally, day in the life, you then have auditing and reporting and a unified view via what we call the Access Manager, looking across my entire Fortune 50 company, which has tens of thousands of employees. At a glance, I'd like to know what percentage of my traffic is considered governed, who's using which security policies. So this view here is sort of the 50,000-foot unification view. The best way to demonstrate this is to actually use the software. So the remaining tabs I have across the top here, I've got QuickSight, and it's connected to Redshift, but it's using the Satori interface. It's not using the original Redshift hostname. It's connecting to a Satori hostname. So you can see on the screen here, some redactions occurred. If I look at address, it's redacted, cities partially redacted, social security number's been entirely hashed, and so forth, right? Next door, I've got Tableau connected to Postgres running in Amazon. Same thing, I have the ability to do my drag and drop that I might be used to, but redactions occurred here. And finally, from a programmatic or API or data science point of view, I've got a Jupyter notebook running, and I can go ahead and query Athena, which is a pretty common pattern from a data science point of view, and get some data. And once again, the information that I want as the administrator of Satori, data stewards, the governance teams, that can all be unified in Satori. And so you see here, redactions occurred. Here's where it gets fun. I'm going to come back now to Satori. I know, because I've been using this demonstration, exactly which one of my masking profiles to make a change on. So I can go in there and say, well, let's, we updated our corporate standards. We've been acquired by Angelbeat. So now let's change that to Angelbeat. And, I don't want to hash the social security. We should probably do, mask everything except the last 4. So I'm going to make those changes and click save. And in a couple of seconds, the system's cache and so forth will immediately start to kick in. By the way, I forgot to point this out. Those queries that you run, they show up here in the audit log. Satori is in the business of identifying who ran a query against what data store, which security policy was applied. There's an audit ID and an incident ID. If they were blocked, that still shows up here. If they were allowed to run the query, it comes in here and will tell you exactly which fields were masked and why. And that actually leads to the last part of our interface that I wanted to show you, which is our data catalog. Automatically, as well as manually, you have your choice there. We will start to catalog and tag sensitive information. So you can come in here and find out, where are all of my, state codes across the entire corpus of my, organization. I want to see where all of my social security numbers exist. And from one page, you can see all of the various data silos where that might occur. Most importantly, you can add your own tags. So we have customers doing things that we can't predict ahead of time. And the custom taxonomy feature, essentially their own custom data inventory feature, allows them to tag their information with our product and then keep track of it from that point on. So again, remember, I made a change to our masking profile. So I'm going to just do a hard refresh on QuickSight because I don't know where the QuickSight refresh button is. So I'll just reload the whole page, see what happens here. Here it comes. And now it says Angelbeat redacted. And what else did I change? I changed the social. Sure enough, the social is no longer hashed. It says last 4 digits. Over here in Tableau, I can do a refresh and actually get the same thing. It should say Angelbeat, sure enough, in real time. And back here, of course, as the data scientist, I've been told to rerun your queries. And normally in the olden days, I'd have to do an extraction or I'd have to rerun a database process. But with Satori, it's all real time. And so those changes are happening live. I'll make sure there's any open questions coming through here. Looks like we're okay so far. And then the last thing to point out, a couple of sort of extra credit items. Ron, I'm going to make sure we're on track. I'm going to stop in about 3-4 minutes. People ask us all the time about integration ideas. How does the Satori product kind of talk both upstream to source systems as well as downstream to source systems? From the hamburger menu here in the upper right, from the product, if you choose documentation, everything you just saw from a user interface point of view has a corresponding API as well as a Terraform provider. So automation of security is a pretty straightforward task. The other thing that we didn't really touch on, but it was happening the entire time, is the Redshift connection and the RDS Postgres connection and the Athena connection, where actually I didn't have to create user credentials in each of those 3 systems. I actually let Satori manage that. And so I've got a Satori end user credential here. This is your audience point of view. These are your data consumers or even BI users or what have you. So you no longer need to try to manage multiple disparate data vendors and match that up and create authorization profiles in Redshift and then do it again in Glue or IAM policies. Oh, and by the way, we also have Snowflake, so we have to set that all up in Snowflake and SQL Server and so forth. That all goes away, and we're actually using unified credential support. And this, by the way, this data portal also provides the self-service process. So people can come in and say, hey, I need access. All of the security policies that are available would show up here, and they'd start an instant request process, which could be manually approved or automatically approved. Getting back to the API concepts, another common question we get is synchronization with downstream. I've got all of this audit data here in my audit log, but some of it I need to send. If they ran a query that involved very, very protected information, or really, any kind of tagging that I want to set up. So for example, on the screen here, maybe they ran a query that triggered a tag called blood type. Well, I want to see that in my Splunk or my Datadog, or I want that to land in its own Athena destination and then report on that. And so on the screen here, I've pulled up an Amazon OpenSearch dashboard. This is Satori audit data having been sent downstream outside of Satori. So from a reporting and operations point of view, you're not restricted to using the Satori platform. It can be quite opened up. In this case, at a glance, I can see which are my most popular data stores and what Satori action was taken. We blocked a bunch of requests on Postgres, and we did masking on Postgres and so forth and so on. So at a glance, this is a really great way of sort of demonstrating that we can send information outbound. Conversely, our customers have other systems that they want to then integrate with Satori. A common example is a ticketing system like Salesforce or Jira or ServiceNow. So on the screen here, the fictitious example, the demonstration moment is, I've got a bunch of data sources and my support technicians, to do their job, they're going to need to request access to the data source for their customer. And so they would put in the comment and they'd get approval or what have you. There's obviously 1,001 things you can do in Jira. But by moving this to a certain status, in this case, in progress, the Jira user has just gained access to that data set. And let me show that to you in real time. So if I go into AWS here and click on user access rules, there's my new support technician. They just requested access to this data and they've got 4 hours on the clock and it's counting down. And then they do their work and they continue, functioning in Jira, and they fix their customer's problem, and then they're ready to, move the ticket to a done state. And again, it's triggering a call and an integration moment to Satori. So if I refresh this page one more time, the Jira user has disappeared from the list entirely. Instant access, integrated with other systems and so forth. So again, I'll wrap this up and make sure there's no questions, and I'll also get you back on schedule run. The Satori platform is available in the marketplace. I'm here to answer questions via chat.